about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything.
Good morning, rooted men. So good to be with you this morning. I'm sporting the suspenders today. What do you think? Yeah, now I feel old. That's rough. I always leave my phone on as it starts so I can make sure there's sound and everything. And then I shut it off. But that's kind of a distraction sometimes because there's like I think it was a 6-second delay today, which is actually pretty good. Sometimes it's 10 or 15. It's the internet. Don't fully understand it, but it seems to work. Let's see who we got with us today. What do you want? You want to check, see who we have? We have a bunch of names on here. I see that. I see Chuck B is here and Ken is here. Good morning, fellow brothers in arms. Dave Donnelly's here. And Tom Donnelly's here. A lot of Donnellys. Bert Reggiani. And who else we got? You got somebody else? And Eric. Oops, Eric. Good morning, Eric. It's kind of weird out right now. When I went to bed, it was cold, and now it's 32 degrees and raining. Oh, yay. I love Michigan. Said no one ever. In my old age, the weather seems to be bothering more than it ever has. And that's frustrating for me. Today's verses are from Judges 15, 10 through 17. Yesterday, Tom talked about the foxes, which was fascinating to me. I have this visual in my head. There was a Samson movie that came out a few years ago, actually more than a few years ago, and they showed that, and it was to watch the foxes running through the fields and spreading the fire as they go. To me, it seems like such an unusual way to do it, but very, very funny. And then it left off that the Israelites had camped at Lehi, which is not good for the Israelites, right? They're worried about it. So today's verses start with verse 10. Let's pull that up. Oops. Let me pull it up first. I messed up for a second. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us? We have come up to bind Samson to do to him as he did to us." That's curious, isn't it? I mean, they want to do to him as he did to us. So what did he do to them? He tied fire. He burnt. Is he going to tie fire to? I'm curious. I think they want revenge, right? I mean, that's pretty clear. They just from what I've seen and read so far, the Philistines must have been an awful people. They were violent, and I mean, they killed his wife and father, burned her after she did everything that she could to get the information out of him. Then the 3,000 men of Judah went down to the clefts of the rock in Edom and said to Samson, Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is it then that you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. And they said to him, we have come down to bind you, that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines. And Samson says to them, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. They said to him, no, we will not. We will only bind you and give you into their hands. We will surely not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes, brought him up from the rock. I was fascinated by this because they were willing to give up one of their own so they all could survive. I think there's a passage somewhere. I probably should have looked it up before I said this, but I remember somebody saying, maybe it was just a dramatization, that the Jewish church was willing to kill Jesus so the religions could survive. One man could die. It seems to be, I don't understand that. And why would he so willingly do this? Why would he so willingly give them over? He knows these people are violent and awful. But he had promised vengeance. So did he know what was going to happen? I was curious. So let's go back to when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. And then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. And the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that had caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. He found the fresh jawbone of a donkey, not your everyday weapon, and put out his hand and took it. And with it he struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men. Him and his riddles. And as soon as he finished speaking, he threw the jawbone out of his hand, and at that place was called Ramath Lehi, which I found fascinating yesterday. I read that it's translated as Jawbone Hill. Ramath Lehi sounds much nicer. I got to be honest with you. But Jawbone, it's a story. It's a great. This is an amazing story. This is a man that is so flawed. I mean, terrible choice in women, just violent, and this is one of the more fascinating stories because God's involved, and yet we see some things that we. Tom says, I think it's funny that they sent 3,000 soldiers to tie Samson up. It's also funny that the 3,000 soldiers were being bossed around by 1,000. They only had 1,000 from the Philistines, and the 3,000 men were scared of them. 3,000 men. This guy must have been something, man. And so. But there's a common thread in this, and that it's happened a few times with him already. It says the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. And I thought, man, it's got to be more stories like this in Scripture, and of course, I was right. In 1 Samuel 10:6, it says the Spirit of the Lord will rush upon you. He's talking about Saul. When Saul was anointed, and you will prophesy with them and be turned into another man. King Saul became a different person. And then in 1 Samuel 16:13, Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. David became a different man. He became a fierce fighter. He killed lions and bears, barehanded or with a sling. I mean, we saw what he did to Goliath. That couldn't have been just it was an amazing turn of events for sure. In Acts 2, though, I think is my favorite because It's after this crucifixion, and they're in the upper room. And then suddenly there came a sound from heaven, as if rushing mighty wind, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. And divided as tongues as of fire appeared unto them, and rested on each one of them. And they were filled with the Holy Spirit, and began to speak in other tongues, and the Spirit gave them utterances. The Spirit. It shows itself in the scriptures, throughout the scriptures, and great and powerful things happen. And I think we don't think about that so much anymore. We'll talk about the Spirit sometimes as I felt warm when I was praying with somebody, or I felt, like I had words that I didn't have in my head or didn't know. But do we look for it for everyday power? Do we look deep inside when we're struggling, and we all struggle? I mean, there's no ifs, buts, about that. But when we're fighting the good fight, and do we feel the Spirit with us? Do we understand that He's there? I guess that's the thing I'm looking at. Do we understand that the Spirit is there, and we have this power that's available to us if we just tap into it? God works in so many mysterious ways, and sometimes when we talk about the Spirit, people shut down because they don't understand it, they don't see it, they don't realize it. For years, I thought that I heard people. I used to get frustrated because people would talk that God spoke to them. God said you should do this. God told me I should do this. I never heard that. And actually, it was Pastor Tom once said, when I shared that with him, he told me, do you think those things that you write or things that you say don't come from the Spirit? And it was like, oh, we but then to me, it's hard to decipher which is the Spirit or which is the other guy. It's a convoluted mess in my head. I know that, but I do understand that He's there, and I think that's the key to all of us. Is we know He's there. He's there, and so if you're looking for Him, you'll probably find Him. I hope this was a blessing to you. I love this book. I got to be honest with you. This has been kind of a fun adventure because these guys are so flawed and such a mess, and Samson's the biggest mess of all of them. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. There's no doubt about that. I pray this was a blessing to you. I saw Brian Blammy came on. Morning, Brian. Nice to have you with us. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. I'm out of here. I'll see you on, let's see, I don't have Friday. So next Tuesday. Blessings on your day, and have a firmly rooted week. Peace.